My favorite feminism text is the Tao Te Ching. Composed and dictated by Lao Tzu 100 years before the advent of the Buddha. If one was to read 12 poems of the Tao Te Ching every day, they would make it through the Tao Te Ching in a week. That means you could read the Tao Te Ching 52 times a year. You could read it 100 times every 20 years. I'm sorry, 1,000 times every 20 years. Do that, and you will notice patterns. You will notice that yet Lao Tzu approaches yin and yang differently than they do in medical treatise or they do in a metaphysical treatise. He views yin and yang through the lens of philosophy. You will also notice that every time yin and yang are mentioned, the reader is told to avoid yang and always rely on yin. But what does that really mean? Yang's attributes, yang elicits within us rigidity, fearfulness, controlling tendencies, elitism, cryptic communication, competitive intentions, and eventually cruelty, often with a so-called good reason. The opposite of yang is yin. And when we are in a yin modality, we tend to be flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So specifically, being flexible and laid back versus being rigid, fearful, controlling, and elitist. In yang, it is felt that the ends justify the means, that no holds are barred, and deceit, coercion, and manipulation are the rule of the day. One moment. While I adjust my environment. Found the heater works great on the couch, but terrible on the floor. Those who are elite, those who practice elitism, happily disempower others to make themselves feel and appear important and powerful and accomplished. Now, how does that correlate with the Tibetan practices of Lung, Tre, and Wang, Lung, Wang, and Tre, which translates into English as reading transmission, empowerment, and explanation. When we read the writings of the first teacher of Dzogchen, we surprisingly come across passages that explain that you don't need a teacher, that you don't need ritual, that you don't need visualizations, that you don't need mantras, and that you don't need energy work. In terms of Sanskrit, they're saying instead of using Maha-yoga, Anu-yoga, and Ati-yoga, we discard Maha-yoga and Anu-yoga and only practice Ati-yoga. During Garib Dorji's time, there was already the practice of Tantric Buddhism. There was already the practice of initiation and ritual and offerings and austerities and the like, and he rejected all of them. Many centuries later, let's see, got to do some math. 21 centuries later, 28 centuries later, the great Tibetan scholar and yogi Zalpatul Rinpoche taught in his final meditation manual that empowerment was not necessary. That the very act of practicing the spiritual practices spontaneously gives full empowerment to all beings everywhere. So we see two great pillars of Tibetan Buddhism, teaching that you don't need others and you don't need empowerment. And yet, go on Reddit, go into a Tibetan forum, and watch the crankiness and aggression and rigidity of the statements made by the people running the group, or at least monopolizing the groups. Suggest what I just suggested about Garab Dorje and Patrul Rinpoche. They will immediately attack you, attack the text you're reading, attack the translations of the texts they're reading, and do everything they know how to do to shipwreck your faith, to borrow a phrase from Paul the Apostle. I don't want to be like people like that. I don't want to be cranky. I don't want to be controlling. I don't want to harm others with my words. I suspect if you're watching my funny face and hearing my words, you don't want to be that way either. If initiation is not important, then how do we practice the path? Simple. Receive instructions and techniques from a person or from a book and apply them. Notice the results. Apply the instructions you receive for about 5 minutes or more, every 12 minutes or so. I'm sorry. Well, that's incorrect. Every 12 hours or so. That's much better. For 7 consecutive days. Now, I can be frank with you. If you can't practice 5 minutes twice a day for 7 consecutive days, then your problem probably isn't the right teacher. It's getting your life in order. And that's a subject for a different lecture. But if you can do that, then by the end of the 7 consecutive days, you'll get a good feel for the effect of the technique on your body, on your mind. If after the end of the 7 days you have less peace and more crankiness, then either you don't understand the teachings, or those particular teachings and their source probably aren't aligned with where you're at right now. And if that's the case, go find a better teacher, or go find a better source of teachings. Similarly, or conversely, at the end of the 7 days, if you notice an increase in peace, an increase in your resilience, an increase in your loving kindness, then you may be on the right track. And by the way, that the followers of Tibetan Buddhism have not cornered the market on crankiness and controlling. You can find crankiness in any group of humans. Remember, if you will, recall, if you will, Sturgeon's law that says that 90% of everything is crap, including meditation groups, including meditation teachers. The test of a teaching is the efficacy of its instructions when you apply them experimentally. When conducting an experiment, you either get the results you hoped for, or you get more information. I remember one time I was in a stressful situation. I was looking for a room to rent, and I encountered one man on the phone through Craigslist, and he was just horrible. And I told that story to a friend of mine, the late Reverend Allen. And he said, "That's great. Now you know who not to rent from." And that was one of the occasions where Reverend Allen was correct. Process of elimination can feel frustrating, but it works. I can't tell you why. I just know for myself, because of the amount of disabilities I have, my body and brain are pretty much a bullshit detector. And if something doesn't work, it really doesn't work. And I have to keep looking. And at times I was scared to leave a group to find teachings that suited me better, because I had a FOMO. I had fear of missing out. I had a scarcity mindset. But eventually I would have to leave and look for a different group. And eventually I found the teachings that were effective for me and my limitations, and eventually for the people I would teach. And so it's safe to practice intellectual integrity. It is safe to use the proto-scientific method of starting with a hypothesis, acting on the hypothesis, noticing results, and based on those results, choosing a new line of action. And then when receiving results you like, submit your results to peer review. It's been my experience that if your results cannot be replicated by a good-hearted and intelligent individual, then that would call the results you generated into question. Together as a team, let's chant the Friday morning excerpt of the Song of Enlightenment, one of the most beloved texts in both Chan Buddhism as well as Zen Buddhism. It was composed many centuries ago by Yong Jie Xuanjue, and it has been translated into English by Red Pine, and it has been adapted and amplified by yours truly. If at any point during the remainder of this morning's live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist chanting, and their applications, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. If you're watching on a desktop or a laptop, that window will be on the right. And if you're watching on a vertically oriented smartphone, that window will be down below. Together, let's chant. At every stage, all stages are present, but not in form or mind and not in what you do. Snap your fingers and countless Dharma doors appear. 3 kalpas go by in an instant. As for all statements being no statements, that means nothing to this enlightened nature of mind. The Buddha taught us a quick path that can be mastered in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. For some reason, if we put spiritual integrity first, things tend to work out in the end. Maybe not as glamorously as we would, maybe not in harmony with our expectation, but things really do work out. Every time we breathe in, due to the workings of our sympathetic nervous system, the confusions we see might come into focus into crystal clarity. But every time we relax into our exhalation, due to our parasympathetic nervous system, those same confusions could feel, at least momentarily, as if they were as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Let's continue. It cannot be slandered, it cannot be praised. Like space, it has no boundaries. It is never not present and always clear, but look and you cannot see it. Buddha nature is an Iron Age term for what we in the Silicon Age would call various aspects of our neural anatomy. The very fact that every healthy mammal, vertebrate life form, contains a a sympathetic nervous system, a parasympathetic nervous system, and an anterior cingulate gyrus means that each of us is wired for mindfulness, for meditation, and for empathy. We have the tools necessary to master the Buddha's path. Let's continue. You cannot grab it and you cannot let it go. When you cannot find it, that is when you will find it. It speaks when it is silent when it speaks. And when the gate of gifts opens, nothing stands in its way. We are wired to notice when we breathe in and notice everything. From the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. And yet, regardless of what's going on, we are wired to physically relax and mentally release during each exhalation. Doing so, it could feel as if that which we noticed during a previous inhalation was, at least momentarily, as non-graspable as the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless day. So we are wired to master the Buddha's path easily, effectively, and effectively. Together. People ask, what is the source of my understanding? I tell them the power of great wisdom. If it is right or wrong, nobody knows. If it makes sense or not, the gods cannot tell. I have been practicing this for kalpas, and not just to make people confused. So, the author of this text was non-sectarian. And instead of saying, I came from this lineage or that lineage, you just say, basically, he studied the Mahayana Nirvana Sutra. He studied the Lankavantara. No. He studied the Vimalakirti Sutra. And he meditated. And the truth just presented itself to him. So the life story of the author of this text, the most beloved text in Zen Buddhism, is proof that there are no true gatekeepers. Our enlightenment is not contingent upon a secret handshake or some other person's approval. Together. Flying the Dharma flag, announcing the school's doctrine. Clearly, the Buddha's teaching is at Cao Shi. Kashyapa was the first to transmit the lamp, the first of 28 generations in the West. So, let us avoid sectarianism. Let us avoid blind faith in so-called spiritual leaders. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. The test of any spiritual practice are the results we generate by practicing the technique for at least 5 minutes, once every 12 hours, for 7 consecutive days. I look forward to meditating with you. After 1 minute, less than a minute of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. I have spent more than half my life studying, practicing, and reverse engineering the teachings and practices of each sect of Buddhism, so that I could be the Yoda to your Luke Skywalker, that you might quickly and easily become the person that your dog already thinks you are. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers, just like you. Let us briefly chant the recitations of empathetic bodhicitta and enthusiastic refuge. We'll start with the longer triplet chant. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. Now, the more concise bookend chant. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. Let us review the basic meditation instructions. Mindfulness and meditation are known by many names, including Zen, Proto-Zen, Chan, Dhyana, Mahamudra, Mahasanti, Ati-Yoga, Dzogchen, and Trekcho. Despite the fanciness of the names, Buddha's method is remarkably easy, as outlined in the 7 enlightenment factors. Every time we inhale, we are not what we are. Let's try this again. Every time we inhale, we effortlessly and automatically access our sympathetic nervous system, which has not evolved for active concentration, but which has evolved to merely perceive, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. One of the easiest ways to align our intention with this most basic function of the thoracic region of our spinal cord is to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during each inhalation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved both for physical relaxation, which pretty much acts as a carrier wave for at least a modicum of mental release. The key to align our intention with the meditations of our lumbar as well as cervical regions of our spinal cord is to silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease during each exhalation. Therefore, mindfulness and meditation correlate effortlessly with our inhalation and our exhalation, as silently and mentally we recite this and ease in harmony with the inhalation and exhalation, as effortlessly we perceive and release. Now, together as a team, let us let us meditate as transformatively as Luke Skywalker on Dagobah under the guidance of Yoda. The seven enlightenment factors are mindfulness, curiosity, energy, joy, tranquility, coalescence, and balance. If the way we practice robs us of any of those factors, then we need to modify our approach to the practice. If there's a teacher in your life who is more cranky than they are joyful, it's probably better to love them from afar and find a new teacher. Welcome to this morning's group practice. If at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or their application, simply type your question in the chat window. I check for questions approximately once every 8 minutes. If this is your first time, welcome aboard. Here's an easy way to meditate. Every time you breathe in, you can silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this, for during each inhalation, we are wired to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. During each exhalation, you could silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease, because during each exhalation, we are wired to physically relax as well as mentally release. This is the key to effortless mindfulness and meditation. Do so, and you too could meditate as transformatively as Luke Skywalker on Dagobah under the guidance of Yoda. Welcome to this morning's group practice. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. I check for questions approximately once every 8 or 9 minutes. Simply put, every time we inhale, we are wired to notice things. Therefore, to align our intention with the functions of our sympathetic nervous system, during each inhalation, silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this. Similarly, every time we exhale, we are wired for physical relaxation and mental release, the essence of meditation. So during each exhalation, you could silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease. Let us seal this morning's practice with a bit of the old chanting, beginning with kind ethics and then concluding with the 4 immeasurables. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness flow spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery. May everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 6 2/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's afternoon group chanting and meditation. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.